thank you all for tuning in this evening. I know you could have been anywhere and you decided to be here with the Southward Environmental Alliance and Green Amendments for All. So I do want to welcome you. I'm Kim Gaddy. I am the founder and director of the Southward Environmental Alliance. And I'm also the environmental justice organizer for Clean Water Action of New Jersey. I reside in the city of Newark, in the South Ward, which is 1/5 of the city. And it is so important when I began to have conversations with Maya about the Green Amendments for All, it just resonated, because in my community, we're a frontline community that is disproportionately polluted upon. We have air pollution concerns. We have contamination water in our communities. We have flooding that happens. And so when you think about, we have a right as humans to breathe clean air and to drink safe and affordable water, this presentation that you're going to hear this evening will resonate. And so what I want to make sure it's okay, we will be recording this session, and just so that we can use this for some of the other members who aren't able to make it this evening. So I just want to make sure that that is okay. If you would prefer your face not showing, then I guess you could click your button. So now, without any further ado, I want to make sure that we start on time and that we end on time. And so I am going to now turn it over to Maya, who is with Green Amendments for All. She is going to give you a presentation that will give you a better understanding into why it is so important for frontline communities like Newark, Jersey City, Camden, and other places to adopt something like this and fight for it. We will drop some information in the chat. Matter of fact, they have Green Amendments for All have an environmental justice fact sheet, and we're going to drop that in the link. And what I want to do is there are a couple key points in that fact sheet that speak to, it is our right to clean air, safe water. Communities should not have to be polluted upon just because of the zip codes that we reside in. And so when you look at that document, I want you to take some time to look through it. And after Maya finishes her presentation, I'm going to highlight 2 or 3 key areas out of that fact sheet that I want you to embrace. And so now it is 6:35, and I want to welcome Maya to make her presentation to each and every one of you. Good evening, Maya, and thank you.
Good evening, Kim. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and for the wonderful partnership of yourself and the Southward Environmental Alliance for advancing this idea of a constitutional green amendment, particularly here in New Jersey, because of its many environmental protection values, not the least of which are its environmental justice values. So I am going to try to take people through a little bit of what I call a story or a trajectory of understanding what this idea is, why we need it, why it's important, and what it will do for us here in New Jersey to help advance true environmental justice. While I am Maya Van Rossum, and I have had the honor of over the last 26 years of serving as the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, working in New Jersey and beyond, I now also have the honor of being the founder and leader of this new national movement called Green Amendments for the Generations, which is very active here in the state of New Jersey with key environmental organizations, and a growing number of partners, a number of whom are wonderfully on this Zoominar joining us, but not, very important in terms of leadership is the South Ward Environmental Alliance and Kim Gaddy herself, who's really helping us to spread the word about the power and importance of constitutional recognition and protection of the environmental rights of all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, wealth, where they live, or generation. Here in New Jersey, we are talking about adding to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights section of the New Jersey Constitution, a constitutional right to a healthy environment. And I just want to really take a moment to read exactly what we're talking about so people understand as we go through this presentation. We are talking about adding to Article 1, the Bill of Rights section of the New Jersey Constitution, an amendment that would say every person has a right to a clean and healthy environment, including pure water, clean air, and ecologically healthy habitats, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of the environment. The state shall not infringe upon these rights by action or inaction. The state's public natural resources, among them its waters, air, flora, fauna, climate, and public lands, are the common property of all the people, including both present and future generations. The state shall serve as trustee of these resources and shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all the people. The rights stated herein are self-executing and shall be in addition to any other rights conferred already by the public trust doctrine or common law. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why on earth do we have to add this language to the New Jersey Constitution? Why do we need this new pathway for environmental protection? Well, we need this new path because while New Jersey has a wealth of environmental protection laws and regulations, agencies, policies, and programs, all of which are supposed to be advancing environmental protection and true environmental justice, when we actually look at these laws and the system of government here in New Jersey, just as with other states across our nation, what we see is that government and these laws are really focused on permitting and managing environmental pollution and degradation, thinking about it at the end of the decision-making process, when really all that's left to do is figure out how we're going to manage and permit the who, the when, the where we're going to allow it to happen. This system of government and laws is not focused on preventing pollution, preventing degradation, preventing harm from the beginning of the decision-making process. We also know that there are a lot of gaps in the laws. There are a lot of things that are not addressed by our current system of laws. We know that all too often there's poor implementation of even the laws that we do have on the books. And inevitably at one point or another, somebody gets into political office who focuses very quickly on rolling back the protections that we do have in place because they don't appreciate the power and the importance of environmental protection and true environmental justice. And unfortunately, racism is literally built into this system of laws, the way they're written, the way they're conceived, the way they're implemented, so that communities of color, indigenous communities, immigrant and low-income communities are continually targeted for highly polluting industrial operations and environmentally degrading actions and activities. And so as a result, we've got communities across New Jersey, across the nation that are drinking contaminated water, breathing contaminated air. We have communities that are being forced to live next to highly contaminated sites or industrial operations. We've got species of all kinds that are being harmed. And of course, we're facing a climate crisis. And so we can see as a result, just by looking at what's happening on the ground, we can see that something is missing from this system of environmental protection here in the state of New Jersey, and that we need something more. Well, when we look at this current system, what we can see, one of the most fundamentally important missing pieces of our system of environmental protection here in New Jersey is that we do not recognize and protect the rights of all the people to clean water, clean air, and a stable climate. We recognize all kinds of other fundamental rights, like the right to free speech and freedom of religion, the right to peaceably assemble, private property rights, and more in the most prestigious place in our highest document of law in New Jersey, in the Bill of Rights section of our New Jersey Constitution. We recognize all of these other fundamental rights and freedoms that we hold dear. But in the Bill of Rights section of our New Jersey State Constitution, we do not recognize the right of all the people to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment. And yet we know, you know, and I know that environmental rights are absolutely worthy of constitutional recognition and protection. They are worthy of being recognized and protected on par with those other fundamental freedoms and rights that we hold dear. Now, right now, there are actually 2 states, Pennsylvania and Montana, who do, in the Bill of Rights section of their state constitution, recognize the rights of all people to a healthy environment. We have a lot of other states that talk about the environment in their constitutions, New Jersey amongst them, but they do not rise to the level of being a green amendment. The language is not in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. It does not recognize the rights of all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, income, or generation, to a healthy environment. They are not focused on the rights of people, on these fundamental basic human rights to clean water and clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And they are not what we call in the legal realm self-executing, meaning that just the language in the Constitution has legal enforceable power. You don't need legislators to pass laws or regulations to figure out or to lay out the rules of the road for you to go forth and seek and secure your constitutional right to clean water and clean air. The fact that the language is added or is placed in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution gives it legal enforceable strength and power that you can use to protect your environmental rights. Now, we have been working at Green Amendments for the Generations. We have been working on inspiring other states to pass Green Amendments, constitutional environmental rights amendments of this kind. And at this point, we have 11 states that have or are about to pass Green Amendment constitutional environmental rights proposals. And amongst the leaders is the state of New Jersey. New Jersey, if we were able to get our act together and we were able to get our politicians to rise to the occasion, to rise to the moment, New Jersey could truly be a national leader in advancing the idea of securing constitutional environmental rights in the Bill of Rights section of our state constitution. I just want to briefly, before we go to discussion and Q&A, just want to talk a little bit about how a Green Amendment would change things here in the state of New Jersey when it comes to environmental protection and particularly environmental justice. What would it do? Well, I can't go into all the ins and outs of every scenario, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit in our Q&A, but broad strokes, big picture, it would do a lot of things. It would mean that our environmental rights were protected on par with those other human, civil, and political rights that we hold dear. Think about how powerfully the right to free speech and freedom of religion are protected because they're in the Bill of Rights section of our Constitution. That same power now comes to bear for the environment. It would mean that government would be focused first on prevention of harm when they're legislating, regulating, funding, permitting, decision-making, whatever it is they are doing as government officials from day one of the decision-making process. They would be including a focus on preventing pollution, preventing degradation, preventing harm to our environment and to our communities. That would become constitutionally mandated as part of the process. Environmental justice would be incredibly empowered by having a Green Amendment in New Jersey and really help us on the path of truly ending environmental racism. Because now every individual, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their income, their wealth, their immigration, what country they come from, where they live in New Jersey, we would all have the same constitutional right to a healthy environment. And government officials would have to protect the rights of all the people, all of us. Government would have a duty to treat all of us equitably. The trust language, you heard me when I read the language, we talked about New Jersey becoming the trustee of the natural resources for the benefit of all the people. That actually brings with it really powerful legal tools and mandates. Among them is that government would have a duty to treat, would have a duty of impartiality, which would mean that they would have to treat all the communities, all the people of New Jersey equitably. It would mean that they would have the duty of prudence. They would have to be thinking about the existing conditions in a community that was going to be impacted by a decision or an action they were about to make or that they were about to take, that they would actually have to consider the science that was relevant to the decision that they were about to make or the action they were about to take. They would have to think about individual impacts and cumulative impacts of their decisions and of their actions before they made them, before they took them. All of that would have to be part of the upfront decision-making process. When you put all of that together, individual rights, the duty of prudence, the duty of impartiality, the duty to treat all of us equitably, regardless of race, ethnicity, or wealth, or where we live, it means no more environmental sacrifice zones. Constitutionally, they are no longer defensible. Legally, they are no longer defensible. The goal of a Green Amendment is to advance better decisions from the get-go, right? Advance the good and prevent the bad. The reality of a Green Amendment is when our government officials get it wrong and they overreach and infringe on our constitutional rights to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments, a Green Amendment gives us immediate access to the courts to vindicate our constitutional right to a healthy environment. In New Jersey, for environmental justice communities, a Green Amendment becomes both a shield, a defense from harms, but also a sword to advance good, positive protective actions and decisions. We would be able to challenge permits that would harm environmental justice communities inequitably. We would be able to challenge laws if we felt they were going to infringe on environmental rights and harm environmental justice communities that were already being overburdened. We could challenge those laws as being unconstitutional. We could use proactively the Green Amendment language to convince our government officials to do good things, to do better things, pass better laws, advance better projects and programs and decisions. When our government officials were sitting on their hands and weren't taking the appropriate action, they were leaving a highly contaminated site contaminated despite the fact that they had laws on the books to do something about it, we could use the Green Amendment to spur them into action. There's so much that we could do if we had a constitutional Green Amendment to complement all of the powerful, important environmental justice actions and activities that are advancing right now already in the state of New Jersey. So I hope that's just a really brief overview about the power and importance of having constitutional environmental rights here in the state of New Jersey. I hope I've given you a little bit of a taste and helped you have a desire to learn more. And if you want to learn more, you can go to www.njgreenamendment.org. We have a page on our website dedicated to the state of New Jersey. And soon we're going to have a more robust New Jersey focused website all across the board. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, well, before we get to questions, I want to thank Maya for that presentation and just give you a snapshot into my world in the South Ward in the city of Newark. And as I mentioned, I'm a mother of three, and all three of my children are asthmatic. I live in the South Ward. I'm a fourth generation Newarker. So my backyard is the port and the airport. We have thousands of trucks that come in and out of the airport, the port, and then the community. On a daily basis, probably about 22,000 trucks coming in and out of the port, and 3,500 of those trucks stay on our local roads, spewing diesel emissions into the air. And then if you just look at the South Ward in particular, Freeland Heisen Avenue corridor, we have one Superfund site. We have 2 youth detention facilities. We have 1 adult facility. We have Sims Metals Management, which is one of the largest metal companies in the world. They are located inside the port, in the South Ward, and in the East Ward. We have a lot of what we call recycling facilities. There's 6 or 7 on the Freeland Heisen Avenue corridor. This is just a 10 to 20 block area. And this community is the largest concentration of public housing. The Newark Housing Authority has 8 high-rise facilities that house about 3,500 senior citizens and individuals whose immune system is compromised. And then we have another Newark Housing Authority, what we call for families, is townhomes, where there's anywhere between another 1,000 or 1,500. So these individuals can't escape from the pollution. It's everywhere. And so one of our mottos at the South Ward Environmental Alliance is 1 ward, 1 community for environmental justice. We can't have the Dayton Street neighborhood bear the brunt of all this pollution. And it's right next to the Weequahic neighborhood that's a little bit further away. And then I live in the Clinton Hill neighborhood, which is, a couple blocks further away. There's no barriers in the sky. We all breathe in this pollution, but some communities are right up on it. And so when we discussed this with the South Ward Environmental Alliance, and one of the reasons that we wanted to take this on is that we cannot continue to live this way. We have to be able to say, no, we deserve the right to have clean air in our communities. We deserve the right to not have lead in our drinking water. We deserve the right to have community gardens where the soil is not contaminated. These are all things that we, not only as people of color, but as human beings, this is what we deserve. And so, this is so personal to me. I mean, this work is very personal to me anyway, but when I first heard Maya make the presentation, I had to jump in and say, what? Why can't we have this in Newark, in the state of New Jersey? And so I'm taking on that fight. And I want you all to come with us. And so, as I mentioned, we put the fact sheet, Green Amendment and environmental justice, and I'm just going to read 2 lines before I then open it up for questions. I'll start off with one, but I want you to start thinking about what you heard and some questions that you want to ask Maya, because we are going to be ready to roll up our sleeves and change our communities. Our quality of life has to be improved in our neighborhoods. And so under that fact sheet, there's a section that says the importance of the environmental justice movement. And a couple things popped out, but I also just want to read these 3 things. It says, additionally, communities that depend on limited set of industries for jobs such as mining or factory work suffer environmentally and economically when the operations close down. We know in this city of Newark, our industrial past has led to a lot of pollution. We was a city that had probably 11 to, I recall my mom used to tell me there was about 11 to 20 different breweries, beer companies, because our water was so good and the way it mixed with the berries that all of these beer places, Pabst Brewery, Anheuser-Busch is still here. I mean, they had, I'm not a drinker, so I don't know all the names, but it was a lot of them here, right? And because of the Passaic River, industry wanted to be close to where the river was. But what they didn't realize is that they was dumping all this pollution into the Passaic River. They was emitting all this pollutant into the air, right? And then when they left, they abandoned all these places. The Pabst Brewery was located on South Orange Avenue. I'm 56, probably 30 years, it's sat vacant. And it, had contaminated groundwater. When they decided to finally knock it down, they didn't even really cover the air, and asbestos was flying all in the air. So our legacy, right? Our our past has created a lot of this in a lot of the old cities like Newark, Camden, Jersey City. And so when you read that line, it says, so they leave behind high levels of environmental damage and a lack of other economic opportunities until some new industry comes into town. We have to flip that, right? We have to change that. There's solar is so important. Wind. How come we can't bring these kind of companies and factories into our neighborhood? Why do we have to have the Amazons or all these warehouses where they're not good jobs and the environments are not healthy? So these are real conversations we also have to have in our community so we can flip it. And then it said, such practices have led to widespread disproportionate environmental inequities, resulting in some communities being seen as expendable. You heard Maya talk about sacrifice zones. We're not expendable. My children's lives matter. The next generations and the following generations should matter. So we have to begin to pick this baton up and fight to change what is happening. And, I could go on, but I'm going to be mindful of the time. So I want to start off with a question, just giving that history and that quick scenario, right, Maya? What does it mean for people in Newark who live in these frontline marginalized communities? How can the Green Amendments for next generation, for all generations, help us? What is it that we need to do? Let's start there and get your questions ready.
So that was so powerful, Kim. And it's deeply touching, and it's sad, and it's angering. But I'm so to hear you speak about the power and importance of having constitutional environmental rights is also uplifting and inspiring. So I thank you for bringing that to this table, because it's so important to know that you see the power and importance of constitutional environmental rights. And I hope that we're bringing everybody along in that same place. If we have a constitutional right to a healthy environment, first off, it is legally powerful and important. So when we have to take somebody on in the courts, we have that tool, but we don't have to just wait to get to the courtroom. I mean, as Kim already talked about, there are so many actions and decisions that government is taking right now, every single day. Sometimes they're choosing to act, sometimes they're choosing to sit on their hands and not do anything and just allow bad stuff to be perpetuated, right? So in those contexts, we can use the Green Amendment as part of our advocacy. The ability to go into a legislator's office or the governor's office or a regulator's office or a town council meeting to say, you have a constitutional duty to recognize and protect my rights to a healthy environment, to serve as a trustee of the natural resources of the state. You took an oath to uphold my constitutional rights. And this constitutional obligation is very empowering for advocates, but it's very meaningful too for those government officials who have to hear you hold them to account in that way. Right. So it's empowering on the advocacy side, but it's also empowering on the legal side and on the litigation side when we have to get there. A Green Amendment is very important for actions moving forward, but it's not only about dealing with future actions and decisions. We can also start to deal with the environmental problems, the air problems, the water problems, the community problems that Kim talked about that have started in the past and been perpetuated and are being perpetuated into the future by how government is choosing to act or not act. So I want to be very clear. We are not, it's not like if we pass a Green Amendment in New Jersey right now in 2021 that we've grandfathered in all the bad crap that's already happened. Right? That's not how it works. If you have an environmental right, just like those other fundamental rights, if that is your constitutional right, then you have an opportunity to find ways to enforce it, whether it started in the past or it starts in the future. Thinking about, what Kim was talking about in terms of the trucking and the truck traffic being diverted through Newark, right? At some point, there was a decision that was made to make that the travel route. From the ports through Newark to wherever it is they were going. And I remember hearing about some of those conversations. Those were actual conscious choices that involved government and government decision makers, right? When those, and right now, keeping those travel routes in play is an ongoing choice about those by those same government officials and decision makers. And so what we want to look for is a moment in time when government is consciously choosing to continue that travel route, or again, sit on their hands and not do anything about it, and bring into play the constitutional right to clean air in our advocacy or our litigation to battle that conscious decision by government that is making that happen and allowing that to continue to happen. When we talk about toxic sites, right? There are times we have a toxic site in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania where there's a green amendment that's been allowed to be left unaddressed for over 30 years. And rather than work to clean up the site, the government was trying to figure out ways to work with the developer to figure out how to develop the site. We're using the constitutional green amendment to say that the government's failure to act for those 30 years is a constitutional violation of the neighbors and the folks who live downstream, right? So that becomes that choosing not to act. If you have a highly polluting industrial operation in and around your community, at some point, their permit has to be renewed. It's not a forever lock-in. When that permit renewal comes up, that's an opportunity for you to bring the Green Amendment to bear on getting changes for what's happening at that site, whether or not it's allowed to continue and how it's allowed to continue. So those are just a few examples, just speaking to the kinds of things that Kim raised in her conversation to give you a little bit of a sense of how it might work real time today if we got a Green Amendment in 2021 in the state of New Jersey.
And thank you for that. So now I'm going to open it up for individuals. I don't know if there's any in the chat yet, but if you have a question, now is the opportunity to answer. It's at least raise your question so we can give you an answer. Anyone yet?
And one of the things I can do, because I love to fill time when
and
I have
call
opportunity.
People too. I will call Maria and some of these other Meredith, and I'll call some people. But go ahead, Maya.
Yeah. So I really. Yeah.
Oh, so I'm sorry. I have my face off, but I'm here and I'm listening. This is Meredith Taylor calling, and I actually feel weird asking the first question because it's a little bit provocative, but I am wanting to know this. So please don't be offended if it kind of comes out the wrong way. But based on the work that I'm doing now with EJAC, and the fact that I just recently became a trustee on the board of the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, I am very keenly aware that a lot of these Green Amendment initiatives and things of this nature are really great in being able to sort of leverage everyone's attention on the kind of harms that can come to sort of degrading the environment. And I see the real applicability of those things to prevent development that hasn't happened yet. Like in particular, there's a pipeline thing that we're talking about now as a result of my work with my new work with the Conservation Foundation. They've been very involved in a legal fight that's going all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States this year, fighting a pipeline. So something like the Green Amendment would help those fights. My concern is what examples can you provide of any of this activity that helps the people in communities that have already been developed around? Like I understand Kim's story and I completely appreciate that. And I don't think that maybe, I'm sorry, I'm being long-winded. I'm just trying to find a way to ask this without being rude.
But no, you're not going to be rude. Just ask.
It seems to me that like a lot of this activity is done to leverage the participation of communities of color. But when it comes time to make these really difficult governmental decisions, they're not going to change their behavior at the port. They're not going to change. Like that is real economic development. It's bottom line dollars and cents. And so to apply the Green Amendment to new things seems much easier than to now try to unwind 50, 100 years of environmental degradation in communities of color. So what do these efforts offer people who are already living in the South Ward, who aren't going to get rid of all these things that are surrounding them?
Yeah.
So that's my question.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important question, and I'm glad you answered asked it. And absolutely, if you have a new threat that's coming in, wherever it is you are, it is easier to say, no, I'm going to bring the science to bear to and the law to bear to keep it out, than to take an industrial operation or activity that's already in a community and figure out how to address the problems that already exist. I'm not going to lie to you and suggest that that is not a significant challenge. But the other thing that there are sort of a couple things. Importantly, to remember that every time those industrial operations have a new permit that has to be renewed, that is a new future action and activity that becomes an opportunity. And maybe you're not going to be able to get that permit for that existing industrial operation rescinded and get them shut down, but you sure as heck could be able to bring to bear the information on the serious air quality problems that exist in the community, the serious harms it is inflicting, you know, on people's health, on the economy, on the ability of children to safely attend school, and secure a permit that's going to require more protections that will help clean up the problem from that industrial site moving forward, and help solve that piece of the problem. And then when the new action or activity has a permit or an action or license or decision that needs to be made, that's an opportunity to now go to town on their contribution to the industrial pollution that is seriously and significantly harming the community. So I want to, every time there's an action or a decision by government, that is a new, fresh opportunity to use the Green Amendment to get meaningful engagement and meaningful change, either through your advocacy, or if not through your advocacy, through litigation, because the Constitution is much bigger than legislation and regulations, where there's a lot of room for the government to manipulate and interpret and apply, you know, as they see fit, or choose not to apply. But the Constitution is above all of that. This is the right of the people. And you know, and we are the ones in charge in this, in that scenario, because we have taken that power back to ourselves to say that we want our environmental rights protected from government overreach and infringement. The most concrete example I can give you right now, happening right now, about, I think, the kind of one of the kinds of situations you're talking about is that toxic site I talked about. That's a community. It is a lower income community. It is a white community, but this toxic site has been there for 30 years. You've got, you know, all sorts of anecdotal evidence of higher rates of cancer. One of our most active participants, her daughter has had to suffer with 3 bouts of brain tumors in her young life. She's in her 20s now. And her mother absolutely 100% believes it is because of the proximity to this toxic site before she was born and after she was born. And as I said, the government was choosing to do nothing to clean it up, despite the fact that there were laws in place and responsible parties that were known. And so what we have gone back to say is that your failure to act to clean up this site, which we know is contaminating the water, and we can prove that, and you, the government, know that, your failure to clean this up is a constitutional violation. So each scenario that we're talking about, whether it's water or air, industry, toxic site, it's always going to play out a little bit differently. The key is to look for those moments of state government action that are perpetuating or allowing the pollution or the degradation to take place or to continue. And that becomes your push point to try to get change, with the passage of a green amendment.
Okay, thank you. And I see Maria. I'm going to read her first question she sent me. How can I pass this information to the Environmental Commission of your town? And are you looking for advocacy from individuals or organized groups? Right, Maria?
Yes, yes. Hi, Kim.
Hey, how are you? Thanks.
This is my third meeting today on the phone.
Okay. All right. So,
So
all
that's
right.
a great question, and there's really a place for everybody. So, you know, if you want to be active in your town, we are really seeking the passage of resolutions by town councils that can be directed to their legislators to say, I believe in this idea. I support this idea of having constitutional environmental rights in the state of New Jersey. And if you want to reach out to your town council member and encourage them to pass that kind of resolution, you can follow up with Kim. You can follow up with us at Green Amendments for the Generations,
Okay.
and we will help you do that.
Franklin, I moved from Union County and now I live in Somerset, and the Environmental Commission at this town is very progressive. The council listened to the Environmental Commission advice, and if you would like to have if you want to have a presentation, present this in the city council, I will start with the Environmental Commission. So let me, I'm gonna say this, if, we could talk later.
Okay,
Mhm.
that
And
would be great. Maybe you can follow up with Kim and we'll circle back and come up with a plan, because that would be terrific. That's exactly
They
the
will
way
welcome
to
you,
do it.
and they will, because our meetings are public, they're on, we have a WebEx. We invite the public and the residents and non-residents to attend. Last week we had a presentation from the leaf blowers. So this probably will be something they will be interested in showing to the town. But you will need to probably start with them first.
Okay, and drop your email in the chat, Maria, as
You
well.
want my email?
Yeah, drop it in chat. That way, Colleen can have it also for Maya.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Let me see. I see some questions are popping up. People can speak up as well. I think there's a question. When using the Green Amendment in the court, do you have to prove the harm, or is the act of pollution enough?
So, as with any legal action here in the United States of America, whether it's in state court or federal court, you really do, your plaintiff, the person who's bringing the case, does have to be somebody who has been impacted, who can demonstrate that they have been directly harmed. So the act of pollution is not enough. You would need to demonstrate that you have been harmed in some way by that pollution or degradation, or want to find somebody else in your community that could demonstrate that harm. And that's just a standard legal principle, constitution, legislation, regulations, any kind of lawsuit where you have to be able to make that case.
So in other words, the environment can't be a victim, it has to be a person.
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, let me ask one while folks are listening. And in terms of New Jersey, where do we stand currently? And what are some of the next steps that you think we need to take?
So you went on mute, Kim, but I think I know your question.
Oh, sorry.
So with the wonderful leadership and partnership of so many organizations and individuals here in New Jersey, like Kim and the South Ward Alliance, like Dave Pringle and Clean Water Action, like Svan and Ava, who are here on this Zoominar, who have been really active Green Amendment leaders, have joined our training and are active themselves and getting others in their school community active. We have gotten to a pretty good place, but not where we need to be. So we have over half of the assembly members that have signed on in support of the Green Amendment. I think we're on the order of a dozen senators. We do have bipartisan support, not huge bipartisan support, but we do have bipartisan support, including in the two key sponsors on the Senate side. Democrat Senator Linda Greenstein and Republican Senator Kip Bateman. We have the opportunity to have the Green Amendment on the 2021 ballot for the people to vote upon if the members of the Senate and the members of the Assembly each vote in support of, pass out the Green Amendment proposal by a 2/3 vote. If they do that, it then goes before the people. There's no role for the governor. So what we need people to do is to be reaching out to their assembly members, to their Senate members, to be helping us like Maria is with trying to connect with town council members to get resolutions to make clear that the community is in support of this, to reach out to your colleagues and your organizations and community members and to urge them to speak up and speak out and chime in with their legislators, because we really are in a moment in time when we could get the power and protection of constitutional environmental rights by the end of the year. Well, it would start at the beginning of next year, but we need our legislators to vote first. They vote first, and then it's in the hands of the people. And I just want to, urge people, think about, and I'm always a little bit loath to use this example because it is controversial, but it is so true. Think about when government takes an action that could infringe on the rights of somebody to bear arms. How powerfully having a Bill of Rights amendment comes to bear on the advocacy, on the litigation, on the outcomes, right? To defend and restore that constitutional right. It is incredibly powerful, and that power is there because of the Bill of Rights placement and language. That's what a Green Amendment is for our rights to pure water and clean air, a stable climate and healthy environments. It takes that most powerful document and that most powerful placement, and it gives that power to we, the people, to protect our environmental rights. And so if you see that, whether, again, the right to freely worship, the right to free speech, all those fundamental rights that we see so powerfully protected because of that constitutional protection, right? The private property rights. Think about how many times industry uses their private property rights to trump environmental protection because there's no counterbalance. If we had a constitutional environmental right, they wouldn't be able to do that anymore because now environmental rights would be there as a counterbalance. That in and of itself is incredibly powerful for environmental protection.
Okay. Any more questions? I know we have some.
Yeah, I think Spawn asked one in the chat, which I thought was interesting, and I kind of want to feedback on. Is there like a certain group of people that you think would be more productive to go to for passing resolutions? Like, is it more important to get your county to pass a resolution, or would it be just as productive to go from like town to town within a county and like have town councils pass resolutions? Is one better than the other, or are they both kind of equal?
I think that they're equal because they represent a different body of constituents. They're both of those kinds of government leaders at the local level resonate with legislators. And every time you make a presentation, as was indicated before, it's at an open public meeting. And so that becomes an opportunity not only to educate those government officials, but to educate the entire community. And so
That's
you
what
may actually have more participation at local town meetings than you're going to have at county meetings. And it might be vice versa, depending on the community. So they're really all valid and valuable. And each one, when you take the opportunity to speak up and speak out, you feel a little bit more confident about talking about the power and importance of a green amendment. And so you'll be ready and wanting to go on to that next, that next entity, because we actually need you to go to all of them. Right? We need individuals, we need organizations, we need local leaders of all kinds to be part of this Green Amendment movement if we're going to accomplish that 2/3 vote. And we do have an active, leaders program. And so if you're interested in being an active leader with Dave and Kim and Svan and Ava, who are very active all the time, as well as others, please let us know, because we really are having growing engagement, because we need all of you to help make it happen.
Great. So I see Maria hand up, and then Sunny. So that'll be the next two questions, Maria. And then please mute your phone when you're not, mute your line when you're not talking. I hear some feedback, and we will definitely reach out to folks, because we must reach out to our legislators. That's the only way we're going to get this passed. But go ahead, Maria. And
I'm gonna be very, very brief. I feel that we need to go from town to town, because, for example, if they make a resolution from the county, I will never find out probably. While by living in my town, I will have accessibility and probably will get mail that will tell me, oh, they passed the Green Amendment. What is this about? But at a county level, I'm not sure how the communication is going to be to a person like me. That's all. That's my viewpoint. And thank you for the meeting. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
And I do quickly, Dave corrected me. I'm working in multiple states. So Dave wonderfully corrected me. And in New Jersey, it's not 2/3, it's 3/5. So sorry, 3/5 vote. So a little bit on par. We got to get more than a majority.
Okay, Sunny, and then Jackie. Go ahead, Sunny.
Okay, good evening. Full disclosure, I am Sunny Gaddy, Kim Gaddy's son.
Hey!
Also a member of the South Ward Environmental Alliance. And being that I'm new as being an environmental activist, taking it more serious as I get older, and how it impacts my community and the people around me, and understanding that this Green Amendment, how important it is for all generations. How successful have you been with engaging with the millennials, or how can we get this information passed out to the younger generation? Because I think there's a disparity. I think there, whether, I don't know if they don't care or if it's awareness, but how can we bridge the gap, including myself? I know I play a part as well, but how can we move forward with that as far as reaching the millennials?
So that's a really great point. And we work very hard at that in every state where we work, particularly in New Jersey. And I think, Sunny, your interest and the interest of Ava and Svan really demonstrates how deeply this idea resonates with people of all generations, but particularly the younger generation, because the Green Amendment specifically says that future generations must be protected. And so when decisions are being made today by New Jersey government officials, if there was a Green Amendment, they would be having to think about the implications for your children and your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren, right? They would really have to be thinking generationally. And that dramatically shifts the decision-making process. So when you're thinking about energy development, if you're thinking generationally, that puts you necessarily on that green energy path, right? That necessarily focuses you on the climate impacts, on the health impacts, right? Health impacts that can pass from mother to child, as a child's forming in the womb. So it's very powerful, and I'm glad that it resonates with you. And I think that we really are finding that when young people hear this message, they immediately see the power and the value, and they want to get on board and rise to the occasion. And we frankly see that with every community. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take the younger generation, the older generation. It's going to take every color, every community, every socioeconomic income. It's going to take all of us to make this happen, because our government leaders, different messages and different messengers resonate differently with each one of them. So we need everybody to play a part. We really
Absolutely.
are trying to reach that younger generation, and any suggestions you have for how we could do that better, or if you want to, get more engaged, if your mom will allow you to take more time.
Yeah, I have
The alliance,
it's
we'll
like
take it.
preparation. She's been, since I've been younger, she's been conditioning and preparing me.
Good woman. She's a good mother.
Yes, finally at 32, he has arrived. Because he was my first child that had asthma, and although I started 20 years ago when he was 12, my other two kids, I've been doing this all my life, so I kind of took for granted. I brought them along, and I had to pull him, but he is there now, and I appreciate that. Jackie Hinkson,
Hi, good evening. I was on a meeting prior, and I'm so sorry I'm late. Please forgive me. And this is my first time. I'm very passionate about this whole thing that you guys are doing, but I need to know how can we approach the cell towers and 5G, because as I heard the young lady prior, I forgot her name, the one that was speaking before, because of the health issues in the urban areas as well as the suburban areas, and how the cell towers and the electromagnetic waves are affecting our brain, childbearing age women, and seniors. So what is your position on that?
Yeah, so a green amendment, we have to recognize, isn't going to be an instant panacea for everything.
Of
right?
course.
And we don't know how it's going to play out in every context. But what we do know, first off, is we don't have this most powerful tool to use on any of the environmental issues we care about. And so, it's incredibly valuable to get it passed, because only by having it passed do we have available to use it or test it in the different kinds of contexts that are important to each and every one of us. What we would have to do is, if we have a green amendment, is first off, in your advocacy over that issue, you would be able to bring forth the science and the facts and the information and go into your government officials and talk about it in the constitutional context, which really helps you reframe the discussion if you're able to make that connection with the language in the green amendment. And then later, later one can think about legally. I can't honestly tell you that I've thought it all the way through, and I don't exactly know how it would work in that context. But I do know, of course, as you've already acknowledged, it won't help if we don't have it. So we work to get it. And then some of these other situations where we're just not sure, it might take a little bit more time to figure it out, but we'll at least have the opportunity if it passes.
So what I can do, thank you. But what I would like to do is get her name. Are you the national? I'm not sure. Please forgive me because I was late.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm Maya Van Rossum, and I work in New Jersey, but I also work in other states on this issue. And I'm also the Delaware River Keeper. So I've been working in New Jersey for nearly 30 years now.
So I will make sure I get you her information, Jackie. Jackie is key. She's with NJEA, the retired teachers, as well as the VP of the Essex County Federation of Democratic Women. So Jackie, you're definitely going to be a key player in this, and we will definitely provide you with the information. I know we're at 7:30, but I want to make sure that Jim Young or Bill Allen, I didn't hear from you guys. Good
evening.
Say, okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited about this. I think one of the things that's most important in this is to make the Green Amendment personal, to tie in the health issue to the environment. We know that we have health issues, but in terms of making the connection is most important. So I see for in terms of for a grassroots, is to make it like what for Kim, make it personal. Why it's important for us to support a green amendment? Why it's important to have one, and how it directly affects our household.
Exactly.
You know, not only financially, but in terms of medically. You know, we have health issues. Why does Johnny have asthma? Why does he have this health concern? And how it ties into air and water and the environment.
Yeah, you are spot on. I couldn't say it any better. Yeah.
Okay, so, and Bill Allen, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I will leave the last word for you. You have a quick question? No?
Let me
Bill?
let me
Okay.
get the light right. I only heard about this meeting about 5 minutes before I logged on, but I'm with the Citizens Climate Lobby. And as we try to do something about climate, there's going to be a lot of construction of a lot of different things. And I'm very concerned about dealing with that issue in a way that's fair to everybody.
So, do I have time, Kim, to speak to that?
Yeah.
So one of the things, that's such a great point. So one of the things I really want to highlight is we do include in the proposed New Jersey language that amongst the natural resources that the state becomes constitutionally obliged to protect at that highest level is climate. We very carefully put that in exactly to be able to work on, ensure that the Green Amendment was powerful and important from a climate justice, climate crisis perspective.
Jackie, mute your phone, Jackie.
So I'll just leave it at that. There are a lot of ways that it plays out in that context, but I want to highlight that for you, and it really is very powerful.